Hello all. Today we'll be talking about how you set up a different credential type than Windows in your Business Central on-prem. So if you are a customer or partner who only works with Business Central SaaS, maybe this is not the video for you. This is again coming from a question asked on a YouTube comment. So thank you for the person who asked this comment, and let's get started. So let's understand it, what we'll do during this. So welcome to this tutorial on how to set up NavUserPassword Authentication in Business Central. This authentication method is handled by Business Central and is not based on Windows user or Azure Active Directory as we have seen in the normal installation. In this scenario, each user is set up with a username and a password that is configured inside Business Central. So let's get started and see how you do that in Business Central. So let me open my Business Central client and let's see what I'm talking about. So on your users page, you define all your users because it's a Cronus environment PC220. I'll add myself as administrator so that at least there is one user who can do something. So I'll do it in 3 steps. The first step is to add a user with username and password authentication inside my Business Central database. So let's head up to the users page and let's add a new user. When you do that, you need to give it a username. So let's say I'll give it the username as Saurav, and other fields are not mandatory at that moment. We're not using Windows authentication. We are not using ACS authentication. That's a different authentication. What you're using is Business Central password authentication, which means I need to define a password to log into this user. So let's set this up and let's try to enter a password that I've generated and click OK. And you might get an error that the password that you entered does not meet the minimum requirement. It must be 8 character long, should contain at least one uppercase character, one lowercase, one number, one special character. And with all these rules, there's one additional rule. It might not have a sequence of 3 or more ascending, descending, or repeating characters. And this is to my surprise, and if anyone from Microsoft is watching this, because I did try all possible crazy scenarios that I can think of passwords that I would like to give for this demo. And here is the password that I'm using for this demo, which I just utilize. It have, and let me click OK so that we can see the criteria. So if you see, it should be 8 character long. So it is actually more than 8 character long. Contain at least one uppercase character. Yes, there are more than one. One lowercase character. Yes, there are more than one. One number, which is there, and one special character. It is more than one. And this is at least, so I can have more than that. It must not be in a sequence of 3 or more ascending, descending, or repeating character. There is no such sequence in this password. So there's something, and maybe I'm wrong. If you're watching this and you see that, oh, sort of, your password have this thing wrong, let me know. Or that's the reason it doesn't satisfy this policy. Let me know and we'll talk about it. And maybe I'm wrong. So teach me if I'm doing something wrong. So, okay, so I'll grab this password outside and I'll click OK. If it is not happening here, let's delete it. And if you identify a mistake, put it into the comment section. And I'll try to kind of correct my mistake as we talk about it later. So let's open our friend PowerShell ISE. Now here what we want to do is we want to load the module. That's the first thing that we have seen in the previous videos also. So let's do a import module on my Business Central 220 service PS1. That gives me so many commands, which also gives me one more command, one special command, which is new nav server user. Okay, I'll back there. New nav server user. So there is a command to add a new server user. Let's try using this and see is there a way to use this to add non-Windows user. Let me zoom this in. So here's this new nav server user and then new nav server user permission set. So I come here and I don't want a Windows account. I don't want an app ID account. I don't want an SID account. And we can talk about these if needed in some other video, but I want a username password account. What is my service? My service is called BC220. This is not actually my service, but my service is BC220 that I'm pointing at. What this web instance is pointing at that service. So I'll use that service ID here or service instance name here. The username, I'll use the same name. And then there are all the booleans that are available. Do you want when this user logs in for the first time should change the password? If you do, then check on this. What, as we saw, it is not working. I'm not going to click on that. And then there should be a way to specify password somewhere. Here it is. But the way if I try to do a test, it will not work because you can't just pass your password as plain characters. That is never the right approach of doing this. So how you do that is you allow user to enter a password which kind of uh, converts to a secure string. So the way to do it is doing by read or writing read host, which allows a prompt to open where the host, which is PowerShell in this case, will try to read something. And then we need a caption for this. So let's say enter password is the caption. And then we need to convert it as secure string. So let's do that. So this, when I try this, as soon as I try to run this command, it will generate a prompt where I can enter my password and then it'll get saved into that field. So let's try to run that. So as you can see, now it asks me the same password and I'm just going to copy this, the same password which I tried there, and paste it here and click OK. This time it got added. And I'm not saying that this is a hack or something, but for the time being, I needed to kind of utilize this. Now we need to assign a permission to that user. So let's see what happened here in Business Central while we did that. So we already got a user called Saurav. Now let's assign him for the time being a super user. The server instance is this, and there is no Windows account. Is that mandatory? Yes, because I'm using the wrong one. I need to come to username tab, again do the assignment, and the username is Saurav in this case. With these three properties, I'll be able to run this command and add my password to that user. So what are the two commands? Let me copy it for you, and if needed, I'll add it into the description of the video. So you should be able to find it in the description of the YouTube video. So these are the two commands to add a user with a password and then assign him or her a permission for that. To begin with, I would suggest do it at least for the one user that you are testing with. Once you have done that, start converting all your users in that model if you want. So we're done with our first step. But now what? Because when I try to log into this window again, it still allows me using the Windows authentication because your client at this moment does not know that you are trying to utilize a different way of authentication. So now what we are going to do, let's head up to our config file. So let's go to program files, and then from there let's go to Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central, your version, service, and then based on the instance. So I'm using the default instance where my service is BC220. So I'll be looking for a file called customsetting.config, which is here. If you're trying to do it on an instance, which is not the default instance that comes with Microsoft installation, the standard installation, look for a folder called instances. Somewhere there should be a folder called instances, if I'm not wrong, here. And then you can do that in that custom setting within that instance. In my case, BC22 dev, if I have to do it here. But for now, I'm using the default instance, so I can do it directly on my custom setting.config, which is here. So what I can do is I can open this on my VS Code, and that should pop up my VS Code with this file, which is this file. It tells me where my server is, where my database is, and so on and so forth. And then they have other options. What we are going to do is look for a section where I can specify what kind of authentication the service is using and set that up. So let's see where that is. And I can actually search for nav username password here. So there's a description against it. The property is called client service type, client services credential type. There are multiple options. Windows, which comes by default. Username, which is another kind of authentication. ACS is a different kind of authentication. And what we are trying is nav user password. There's some documentation that you can read about it. It is managed by server, not by the Windows user. Client is expected to present username and password, matching a user known to the server. That means your user info is stored inside your Business Central database. Typically, the client will be asked for these credentials. Certificates, we'll talk about it at the end. So let's see. So you can read about it as needed. So I'll change it to my nav user password. Let's save this file. Okay, hopefully this is saved because I ran my VS Code as administrator. Okay, now what's the next step is to restart the service. You can either do it from here, or if you are a fan of PowerShell like I am, you're gonna start doing it here, which is restart nav service instance, server instance, and then BC220. What this will do, this will go ahead and stop the service, and then we'll start the service as you think about it, right? So it's starting right now, as you can see. So with this, we have defined service to say that, okay, I'm not using the default Windows authentication, and I'll be using the nav username password authentication. So let's wait for this to start, and then we'll be good to go to our next step. So let's keep refreshing this and see once it is done. Oh, it's running. When you come back to PowerShell, if you're running from here, you'll also see a confirmation here once it's kind of done. So once this is done, let's try out what happens in our client. Okay, so let me try to refresh this to see what happens. And now you get an error message. You don't have access to Dynamics 365 Business Central. Verify that you have been set up as a valid user in Business Central. Oh, we did everything. We were expecting a prompt for username and password, which is not coming. Now, if you have seen the installation videos, another video where we have talked about the configuration of Business Central, you will understand that there is one last piece which is missing. We have built the connection between the database and the service tier. The service is running, and in the service tier, we have defined a different authentication type, which is NavUserPassword. But we never change it into our website where this is being hosted. So let's head up to our IIS, which is here, and click on the web server account or the web server that you're using instance. Go and search for Explorer. It'll pop up this page of www and then your folder. The easy way that I like to use this page is by using the Windows filter option, which because I change the view, I can't see it. So let me explore again. Here it is, and let's try. So what I'm trying to do is go back to list view. So let me try going to list view. Okay, not the list view, maybe the detail view here. So the easy way that I like about this page is I can filter it out here with the JSON source file and the configuration source file. Either of those will have it. Now in this, there is a file called navsettings.json. Let's open this file again in VS Code. And this is what controls or have the relationship between your nav or BC web service, or sorry, BC service and your website. Here also you see this property called client service credential type, and it's currently set to Windows. And that's where the mismatch is happening between the service tier and your web server instance. So let's update this to have user authentication, user password. Let's save it, retry it as win, and it should get saved. So it's saved now. Okay, so let's minimize this. Let's try minimizing this. Let's try going back home and see what happens. Nothing. Okay, let me try again. Nothing. So I guess the last thing that I'm going to do here is trying to access this again and see if it works or not. Because sometimes it kind of caches the info that you're trying to access, but still there is an error. So let's try stopping this IIS. It'll take a while, and once it kind of stops it, then you start it again. So we'll do that in a while once it stops. So this seems to be stopped. Let me start it again, and it normally gets started pretty quickly. So let me try accessing it again. And okay, so we are good here. I'll have to search for my password for sure. Let me see where is my notepad where I saved this password. Okay, let me copy my password from here and let's paste it here. Let me do a sign in. So now Business Central is logging in with my username and password, and hopefully I'll be able to access Business Central because I have super rights for this user. So at this moment, what I'm using is a username password authentication, and it is not this user, to be very fair. It was refreshing. So now I'm using my username password authentication to access my Business Central. And that's it. Now, before you leave this video, let's hear some final recommendations. Now you know how to set up NavUser authentication in Business Central. But remember, in a production environment, you should always obtain a certificate from a certification authority or a trusted provider. In a test environment, if you don't have a certificate, that's okay, but you can also create your own self-signed certificate. And what a certificate looks like, how you can test it out, we'll surely cover it in the coming video, in the next video, possibly. So let's do a quick recap. If you have to change your credential type, nav username, password in your Business Central on-premise installation, you need to do 3 steps. The first step is set up your Business Central user account with a password, and don't do it for all at the beginning. Just try it with one, as we see in this video. The second step is configure your Business Central service tier, where you set your client credential type to NavUserPassword. Restart your service instance in that part. And the task 3, which is the final task, is configure your Business Central web server component, where you again configure the same property called client service credential type to the value NavUserPassword, and then restart your IIS and try to access your client. You can add your user from PowerShell or from client if you can. If you see a issue with my password that I was using for this demo, let me know. I'm going to delete that user from my environment, or even delete that database more or less after this demo. But let me know. So hopefully you learned something new today. If you did, please do share this video. If you are new to this channel and like the content, please do subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification so that you get notified whenever there's a new video, which is, at least at this time of the year, it's every day. I'll see you in the next video as soon as possible. and we'll talk about certification, self-signed certificate scenario in Business Center. Thank you. Have a nice day.